Hi, I'm Sophie. It's the middle of April, so I thought it would be nice to look back on my first 3 months of reading in 2026 and talk to you about my favorite books of the year so far. I have picked out 5 books. Some of them have been in reading vlogs, but not all of them, so I really wanted to highlight them in a video somehow. And I'm thinking to do this kind of video like every quarter so that I can tell you about my favorite books of the past 3 months and have a way of recommending them and talk about them outside of my vlogs. They're not really in any particular order, I just have them stacked next to me, but the first book I want to talk about is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I've read this one in January, I think, and it's a contemporary romance. It had been on my TBR for, I think, a few years now. It's a romance series that I really want to check out because I've heard people like compare Talia Hibbert contemporary romance a little bit to Emily Henry, and I don't know, it just sounded like an author I might like, and I did really enjoy this book. So it's about Chloe, obviously, who has fibromyalgia, is chronically ill. And one day she almost gets hit by a car, and that makes her realize that she isn't really living her life to the fullest. And she makes a list of things she wants to do to help her get a life. The first thing she does is move out of her parents' house and move into this apartment complex. And the superintendent of this apartment building is Red. And Red is kind of the opposite of Chloe. Chloe is more introverted and grumpy, very she never does anything bad. Red, he has tattoos and a motorbike, so he looks like the bad boy, but he's really like a sweetheart on the inside. He's more of a sunshine character. He likes helping people. He's more extroverted. He helps her with her list, and obviously they fall in love. It's contemporary romance. I really enjoyed both of the characters, both Chloe and Red. I do have to say, grumpy is sunshine, but a grumpy girl and a sunshine boy is one of my favorite things to read. Really love that kind of dynamic. I also really like that this has very realistic characters. Both Chloe and Red have things they have to deal with throughout the story to be able to get together. And I thought that everything was handled very realistically in this book, but it also does have a lot of humor, and I think it's the perfect blend of those things. So it's both lighthearted, but also has some more heavier themes. These two characters has an abusive relationship in the past that they have to move on from. And obviously we have the chronic illness representation. So I really love the blend of the more heavier themes and the realism with the more lighthearted tone of a contemporary romance. So really great contemporary romance that I can highly recommend. If you like Emily Henry books, I think this is worth a try. It's not the same as Emily Henry, obviously, but I did enjoy this one. And I have the 2 other books in the series on my TBR. And those are about Chloe's sisters, who we've already met in this book, and I'm really looking forward to those. So yeah, that's the first one that I want to recommend, and one of my favorite books of the year so far, Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. The second book on this list, one of my favorite reads of the year so far, is Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan. This is a fantasy book, and it's about Ray, who's dying in the hospital at the beginning of the book, and a mysterious woman appears at her bedside, offering her a second chance at life by telling her that if you go through this door, you will end up in the world of your favorite fantasy series. Ray doesn't believe her, but she does go through the door thinking, I don't have anything to lose, and she does end up in the world of her favorite fantasy series. The mysterious woman told her that she would become the character in the story that was the most like her, that would fit her the best, but Ray ends up being one of the villains in the story. And she kind of embraces it and starts collecting other villainous characters and try to escape this story because she has to find like this flower that only blooms once a year, and then she will be able to return to the real world and live. But if she's not able to get this flower, she will die in the real world and will be stuck in the fantasy world forever. So this is a portal fantasy, which is a subgenre in fantasy that I really enjoy. I do have to say that this is a very campy story. It doesn't take itself very seriously, and that's why I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, but I really enjoyed the camp and the humor in this story. It was so much fun. I really loved all of the characters. Ray is funny as hell. The friends that she makes along the way I really loved. And there's like a villainous romance in this that I ate up. I wouldn't call this a romantasy, it's more like a subplot, but I really enjoyed this. The sequel comes out in May. It's called All Hail Chaos, and I'm so looking forward to it. But yeah, this one also highly recommend, but do be aware, it's campy, it's not a serious fantasy story, but it's very, very fun. The next book on this list is the one that surprises me the most, that it made it to my favorite books of the year so far, because it's not like in genres I read most. I mean, it is a fantasy book, but it is a middle grade fantasy, and I almost never read middle grade fantasy. I do read young adult fantasy from time to time still, but middle grade, not so much. But Amari and the Night Brothers, this was just a really, really good fantasy story. And I had heard good things about it, which is why I wanted to try it out. And it lived up to it. So this was Amari. At the beginning of the story, Amari's brother Quentin has been missing for like 6 months. Amari believes he's still alive, but there's no sign of him until someone knocks at the door at the beginning of summer vacation. And he says he has a package from her brother and it will be in the closet. And she thinks like, how can it be in the closet? But in the closet is a briefcase from her missing brother with a lot of stuff, but also like a letter from the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. Apparently her brother worked for this bureau. He had this very mysterious job that Amari and her mother knew nothing about. And he has nominated Amari for this summer camp, and she has to go to an interview at first, and then she goes to this summer camp. She finds out that the world is full of supernatural creatures. There's like everything you can imagine is in this book. You have werewolves, witches, aliens, the Yeti, like everything you can think of. She goes to this summer camp, and obviously it's called And the Night Brothers. The Night Brothers are two evil magicians, and they might have something to do with her missing brother, with his disappearance. So Amari goes to the summer camp to find out what happened to her brother and get him back. That's the setup of this. This is also, just like Long Live Evil, a very fun story. I think it's a great palate cleanser if you're looking for something more light to read. For a middle grade, it also has some twists I didn't see coming. And I think as an adult, you can still enjoy this story. So yeah. Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, one of my favorite books of the year so far. Just now realized that the next book on my list also is about a missing brother, and that is The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. This is a historical fantasy set during World War I, and we follow two perspectives. First, we have Freddie. Freddie is a soldier in the Canadian Army, and during one battle, he ends up in a collapsed pillbox next to a German soldier. They get out alive, and by helping each other, they befriend each other. But obviously, they're on different sides of the war, so not great. And they kind of try to flee. Then we have, what was her name? Laura. Laura is Freddie's brother, and she gets a box with her brother's possessions, his clothes, and the army says he's dead, but she doesn't believe it. It doesn't really make sense. So she decides to go to the war zone and find her missing brother again. And she starts hearing stories about this fiddler whose music gives soldiers the gift of oblivion, and she thinks that maybe her brother Freddie has met his fiddler and that's why he has gone missing. This is a very beautiful story. I would say it's light on the fantasy element. It's more magical realism, and it's really a fantasy story. So it's heavier on the historical element. I think like the first half of this book is really a historical fiction, and then later on we get like more about the fiddler and that magical element. But it's a really beautiful story. I think Catherine Arden has really done her research. And I really like that a large part of this book is set in Belgium, because I live in Belgium. And I thought when I saw this in the bookstore, not only is it like a beautiful edition, I go like, okay, I've read a lot of World War I and World War II stories, but I haven't read a lot of them that are set in Belgium. A few, but not a lot. And most of the time those are written by Belgian authors. So I thought, I might want to check this one out, especially because it has this magical element. And I do have to say that historical fantasy standalones, often they are my favorite books, and this was no different. So yeah, I really want to check out more by Catherine Arden. I've heard great things about The Bear and the Nightingale trilogy that she has written, and she's coming out with a new book this year called like the Unicorn Hunter or the Unicorn Hunters, something like that. And I might check that one out. But I think this is a great book for both historical fiction lovers and fantasy lovers. And yeah, can't recommend it enough. It's a really beautiful story. It will make you emotional. And it's also just very realistic, combined with like that little bit of magic in it. So, great read. Then we have the last book on my list of my favorite books of the year so far, and that is Us Against You by Fredrik Backman. I read the Dutch translation. These books are originally written in Swedish, and this is the sequel to Beartown by Fredrik Backman, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And this one was also really good. I would say maybe not as good as Beartown, but just a little bit below it. On the back it says that you can read this separately from Beartown without having read the first book, but I would really recommend reading Beartown first, because the events of Beartown do affect everything that happens in this book, and you won't really be able to understand the characters. I really think you should read Beartown first. Beartown is about this town called Beartown, and like the hockey team is like the pride of this town. A crime happens involving one of these hockey players, and we kind of see how everyone in town reacts to this event. Don't really want to say more about Beartown than that, because you really just have to read it and like experience it yourself. This is a direct sequel, so this is set right after Beartown, and we still follow the same town. And in this book, everything kind of revolves around the rivalry between the hockey team of Beartown and the hockey team of Het, and everything that like goes on before they have this one match in hockey season. Like I said, I think things will make more sense if you read Beartown first. And Fredrik Backman is just really great at writing characters. These characters really grow on you, especially if you've read the first book and then you see them in this book. He's also just great at writing beautiful prose. He has very quotable books, I would say. I also read Anxious People by him, also loved that one. So this is more like contemporary fiction, literary fiction. But I think it's something that a lot of people can enjoy, just because the characters are so real and you really get to know them. You follow a lot of them, but somehow he manages to make you care about every single character. So, Us Against You by Fredrik Backman, one of my favorite books of the year so far. Not really that surprising, because the other two books I've read by him I've also loved. I have The Winners on my TBR, which is the final book about this Beartown, and I hope I will love it as much as I did the first two books. Those are my favorite books of the year so far. So here's my little stack. Us Against You by Frederick Beckman, The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden, Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, Long Live Evil by Sarah Reese Brennan, and Get a Life Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. Let me know in the comments what your favorite book of the year so far is, or if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were about them. And I will see you in whatever comes next.